On June 1st, 1944, a B-17 Flying Fortress, an American long-range bomber, crashed into the side of Cavehill, a little mountain in Belfast, Ireland. All 10 members of the crew perished in the crash. Here are their names: Lester B. Brooks, pilot; Jeremiah C. Murphy, co-pilot; Joseph V. Nobilioni, navigator; Leighton B. Mackenzie, bombardier; Howard A. Hibbler, aerial gunner; Wilbur D. Brewer, engineer gunner; Lawrence R. McGrain, aerial gunner; Edward E. McGill, aerial gunner; Robert L. Graves, armorer gunner; Lawrence E. Dundon, radio operator. 62 years later, in 2006, a memorial to the crew was put on the side of Cavehill. The ceremony was televised in news reports by the BBC and UTV. Here follows the reports.
Immortalised in a Hollywood film, but today, 62 years later, the man got their memorial. BBC Newsline's Julian O'Neill was there for that.
The B-17 bomber flew in from Britain to perform its Duke flypast. In doing so, it came over the exact spot where 62 years to the day the 10 crewmen died. Among those at today's service was a man who, as a 10-year-old, saw the bomber hit the hillside in heavy fog.
It has stayed with me all these years, and it is wonderful to see that B-17 flying over, because I literally hadn't seen one from that day to this. So it's very, very emotive to see it flying over, and to realise that I was probably the last one to see it, poor fellows.
300,000 US servicemen were here at some point during the war, and this new memorial is also a symbol of that bond.
This tribute today is not only a symbol of the great sacrifice that so many made in the cause of freedom, but is also a symbol of the enduring ties that bind Northern Ireland and the United States.
One crewman's wedding ring was found at this site decade after the crash and was returned to his widow by a local man in a story that inspired a Hollywood film.
We can really thank the interest that's come into Belfast currently with the film production, because it inspired the council to do us of their own maps.
The B-17 was one of the war's most famous combat aircraft. Today it came out of retirement to honour its fallen. Julian O'Neill, BBC Newsline, on Cavehill.
At the moment, the Flying Fortress crashed into the Cavehill above Belfast 62 years ago. Another B-17, a survivor of that era, flew overhead.
A 10 minutes earlier, the Lord Mayor, performing one of his last official duties, unveiled the permanent memorial to the 10 airmen who died in the impact.
And among the invited guests, Gordon Bernison, who, as a young boy, witnessed the tragedy.
I eventually heard an explosion, and I kept running until I got to the Antrim Road, up to Ben Madigan Park, and there was a plane among the trees just above Ben Madigan Park, blazing away. And eventually the ammunition began to explode in the heat and that sort of thing. I lay behind a tree.
For years, people have known where the plane perished. Alfred Montgomery had been excavating the site when he discovered a treasure.
I took the ring home that evening and didn't realise it was a ring. I thought it was another fragment of the aircraft. It was only when I started to clean it, it was coming off a bright gold colour, and I knew it was a metal that hadn't tarnished. And was more than shocked to find the inscription of the two names and the wedding date on the inside of the ring.
And the story out of that ring is now the subject of a Hollywood movie. One of those instrumental in a permanent memorial was a local MP.
There wasn't anything similar as the marks there where they had died. And I think this is very sitting on the 62nd anniversary of their death. So a very moving ceremony and a tremendous event in Belfast today.
None of the relatives could travel for today's ceremony. They were represented by the US Consul General.
This is a particularly sitting tribute the City Council has done, and I can't tell you how much it means to me as an American to be standing here in Belfast and to this beautiful memorial that they've erected and dedicated to this.
The Flying Fortress flew past 4 times, a tribute to American airmen of an earlier generation was live down to the mist hillside on this date 62 years ago.
Aren't they filming that at the minute?
They are there in Canada, and it's due for release either at the end of this year or the beginning of next year.
That's a rate could happen, though, yeah.